The gallows stood like a stark promise against the Arizona sky. A crude wooden platform, built in a hurry, but sturdy enough for its grim purpose. The crowd had gathered early in Prescott's dusty main square, a mix of settlers and ranchers, all drawn by the spectacle of what they called frontier justice. Ethan McCord watched from the edge of the crowd. His weathered face was a stone mask, betraying nothing. He leaned heavily on his walking stick, the wooden leg beneath his right pant leg keeping him steady on the uneven ground. At 52, the former Union captain had seen too much death to be moved by one more. But this one felt different. On the platform, an Apache man stood with a dignity that shamed the gawking crowd. His hands were bound behind him. He refused the blindfold offered by a nervous young soldier. His crime? Stealing army cattle to feed a starving family. His real offense? Being Apache in a territory that had declared war on his kind. Captain Silas Blackwood supervised the proceedings. Tall and imposing in his cavalry uniform, he was the picture of military authority. When he gave the signal, the trap door would open, and one more problem would be eliminated from the Arizona territory. "Any last words?" the young soldier asked, his voice cracking. The Apache man surveyed the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the eager faces until it settled, with unnerving precision, on Ethan. "We are all ghosts soon enough," he said in perfect English. "Some of us just don't know it yet." Then he said something else, a single word in his native tongue, a name, a warning. Blackwood nodded to the executioner. The lever was pulled. The trap door opened with a terrible crack. Ethan looked away, his jaw tightening. As the crowd began to disperse, he turned and limped toward the livery where he'd left his horse. That single Apache word echoed in his mind, a name he hadn't heard in 5 long years. "McCord!" a voice called behind him. "Ethan McCord!" He turned to see Willis Thornton, the owner of the general store, hurrying toward him. "Didn't expect to see you in town," Thornton said, catching his breath. "Thought you were determined to become a hermit out there." "Supplies," Ethan replied simply. "Can't live on dust and memories." Thornton chuckled nervously. "Heard Blackwood's got his men hunting 2 Apache women. Dangerous ones, they say. Killed his son." Ethan's expression remained impassive. "That's so?" "Offering $1,000 apiece." Thornton lowered his voice. "Double the usual. Must want them real bad. They say one's tall as a man, educated too. The other one's got only one eye, face all scarred up. Scary business." "Thanks for the warning," Ethan said, already turning away. "You watch yourself out there, McCord. 16 miles from nowhere, a man alone. Just be careful." Ethan nodded and continued toward the livery. The Arizona sun was beating down, and the day was only getting started. He needed a drink. The Silver Dollar Saloon was quiet. Ethan sat at a corner table, a glass of whiskey in front of him. The hanging had stirred up ghosts he preferred to keep buried. From his pocket, he withdrew a tarnished Medal of Honor, turning it over and over in his calloused fingers. Next came a small daguerreotype in a silver case. Eleanor, his wife, smiling with a quiet dignity. Their son Samuel on her lap, no more than 3. Both gone now. Eleanor to fever, Samuel to an Apache raid. Or so they told him. The saloon doors swung open, and 4 cavalry soldiers entered, Lieutenant Davis among them, Blackwood's eager second-in-command. "We'll find those squaws," Davis was saying loudly. "Captain's got patrols on every trail." "Killed young James Blackwood," he told the bartender. "Captain's only son. Found him with his throat cut." He made a slashing gesture across his neck. "No man deserves to bury his son." Ethan remained still, watching. He had known James Blackwood, a young man who'd inherited all of his father's arrogance, but none of his honor. "Heard they got papers, too," another soldier added. "Government papers." Davis silenced him with a sharp look. "That's enough, Miller." Ethan left coins on the table and stood. As he passed, Davis called out, "McCord, didn't see you there. Long way from your ranch." "Just supplies." Davis studied him with open suspicion. "Captain Blackwood mentioned you refused to sell your water rights, said it wasn't neighborly." "My land, my water," Ethan replied evenly. Davis smirked. "Just be careful out there. Lot of dangerous Apache renegades about. Hate for anything to happen to an old war hero." The threat was clear. Ethan merely nodded and walked out into the punishing sun. The 16-mile ride to his ranch felt longer than usual. The drought had turned the landscape into a wasteland of dust and cracked earth. 8 months without rain had killed half his cattle. The rest were skeletons, barely surviving on the trickle from the small spring on his land. The spring Blackwood wanted. As he crested the final hill, his ranch came into view. A small house, a barn, a corral. He had built it all with his own hands when Eleanor was still alive, when they dreamed of a life far from the memories of bloodshed. Now it was just him and the ghosts. He unsaddled his horse and went inside. The emptiness of the place was a physical weight. In the bedroom, he opened the old trunk at the foot of his bed. Inside lay his Union Army uniform, carefully folded. Beside it, Eleanor's wedding dress, and in a small box, a pair of tiny boots. Samuel's first. He closed the trunk without touching anything. He poured a whiskey and sat on the porch, watching darkness claim the land. His thoughts turned to Blackwood. They had been friends once, brothers in arms. But Chattanooga had changed everything. Blackwood had ordered the burning of a civilian village. When they protested, he'd ordered them shot. Ethan had refused, placing himself between Blackwood's men and the villagers. "They're civilians, Silas," he had said. "They're rebels," Blackwood had replied coldly. "And you're a coward." The divide had become a chasm. 6 months later, when Ethan's unit was surrounded, Blackwood's reinforcements arrived too late. A Confederate shell had taken his leg. The Medal of Honor he received meant nothing compared to the cost. He drained his whiskey, but the burn did little to quiet the ghosts. He was alone with his memories and his regrets. Or so he thought. The sound came just after midnight, a faint scraping from the direction of the barn. Ethan was instantly alert. Years of soldiering had honed his senses. He reached for the Winchester rifle, always kept loaded by the door. His movement was silent, even with the wooden leg. Outside, the moon cast a silver light across his property. A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness by the barn door. Ethan raised the rifle. "That's far enough," he called. The figure froze, then slowly raised its hands. "Just looking for a place to sleep, mister," a man's voice replied. "Didn't mean to trespass." "You're mighty well armed for someone just looking for shelter," Ethan said, noting the pistol on the man's hip. "Dangerous country. Turn around, slow." The stranger complied, bearded, weathered, with the hard eyes of a bounty hunter. "What's your business here?" Ethan demanded. "Told you. Just passing through." 16 miles from nowhere in the middle of the night? Ethan shook his head. "Try again." The man's hand twitched toward his pistol. Ethan's first shot caught him in the chest before he could even draw. The stranger staggered backward, shock on his face, but somehow managed to pull his gun. His shot went wild as Ethan's second bullet found his throat. The man collapsed, blood darkening the dust. Ethan approached cautiously, rifle still trained on the dying figure. The bounty hunter's eyes locked onto his, and a flicker of recognition, of bitter amusement, crossed his face. "After all these years," he gasped. "Still the righteous judge, eh, Captain?" Ethan frowned, studying the man's face. There was something familiar there, buried beneath the beard and the years. Morrison, he realized. Thomas Morrison, Tennessee Cavalry. The dying man managed a bloody smile. "Remembered after all. What are you doing on my land?" Morrison's breathing grew labored. "Blackwood pays well for certain jobs. The Apache women." A wet chuckle escaped Morrison's lips. "Not just what, but who?" His eyes began to glaze over. "Blackwood will burn this all down when he finds out." "Finds out what?" Ethan demanded, pressing the rifle barrel against the man's chest. Morrison's gaze flicked toward the barn, a final, deliberate look. Then the light in his eyes faded completely. Ethan checked for a pulse. Nothing. He searched the body and found what he expected. A wanted poster with crude sketches of two Apache women. The reward, $1,000 each. Authorization signed by Captain Silas Blackwood. But he also found something else. A folded military map of Apache territory. But this map had strange markings, handwritten notes, and a message. "Confirmation required before relocation plan proceeds." The signature beneath belonged to Senator Harrison Wainwright. Relocation plans weren't unusual, but this felt different, more ominous. His gaze turned toward the barn. Morrison's dying look had been a message. Gun still ready, Ethan approached the barn door. He eased it open, letting moonlight spill across the hay-strewn floor. "Whoever's in here," he called, his voice low. "Come on out, we'll talk." For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice emerged from a shadowed corner, steady, with the accent of an educated Apache. "We mean you no harm." Two figures emerged from behind the hay bales. The taller one stood at least 6 feet, with a regal bearing that seemed out of place in her ragged buckskin dress. Her face, framed by black hair streaked with silver, showed the lines of 50 years, but held a fierce, unbroken dignity. The other woman was shorter, but just as imposing. A jagged scar ran from her forehead, across an empty eye socket, and down her cheek. Her remaining eye studied Ethan with a calculating intensity. "You're the ones Blackwood's hunting," Ethan stated. The tall woman nodded. "I am Tazai. This is Kiana." "We asked for one night's shelter," Kiana said, her voice a rasp. "By tomorrow we will be gone." "I just killed a man looking for you," Ethan said. "He won't be the last." "We can pay," Kiana said, reaching slowly into a pouch and producing 3 gold coins. "Keep your money," Ethan said. "I want the truth. What does a U.S. Army captain want with 2 Apache women so bad he's sending killers onto private land?" The women exchanged a look. "We killed Captain Blackwood's son," Tazai said simply. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. "That seems like something you might have mentioned earlier." "We killed him," Kiana clarified, her single eye unflinching, "because he tried to assault Tazai after she refused to stay silent about what Blackwood and Senator Wainwright are really doing." "Doing what?" Tazai stepped forward. "Stealing government funds. The money, the food, the medicine meant for our people at San Carlos. They let our children starve while they grow rich." Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd heard the rumors. Disease. Starvation. He dismissed it as just another sad story. Now that story was standing in his barn. "James Blackwood said Apache women were government property," Tazai continued, her dark eyes holding his. "He said resistance meant death." Something cold and familiar settled in Ethan's chest. The same feeling he'd had at Chattanooga, watching power wielded without mercy. Before he could respond, Kiana moved to the barn door and peered out. "Dust," she said sharply. "Riders coming. Many of them." Ethan joined her. On the horizon, a tan cloud rose like smoke in the moonlight. Even at this distance, he could make out the silhouettes of mounted men. "Blackwood," Tazai confirmed grimly. "At least a dozen riders, maybe more." 20 minutes before they reached the ranch, he had to make a decision, and he had to make it now. "Why my land?" he asked, turning back to them. "We needed water," Tazai answered. "But also, we know who you are, Captain McCord. Medal of Honor, the man who held the line when all seemed lost." "That was another life," Ethan said, his eyes narrowing. "A life where honor mattered," Kiana said, her single eye seeming to look straight through him. "We gambled that it still does." The dust cloud grew larger. Ethan thought of his wife, of his son, believed killed in an Apache raid. He should hate these women. He should hand them over and collect the $2,000. Instead, he remembered Morrison's map, the cold calculation of a relocation plan, the ghost of Chattanooga whispering about the difference between following orders and doing what's right. And he remembered the Apache man on the gallows who spoke a name only Ethan would understand, his son's name, Samuel. "I've got a cellar," he said finally. "Entrance is hidden under the kitchen floor." Relief flickered across Tazai's proud face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ethan warned. "When Blackwood arrives, if I decide your story doesn't add up, I'll hand you over myself." They followed him to the ranch house. He moved the kitchen table, pulled up a trap door, and revealed a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "It's not comfortable," he said, "but it's cool, and there's water stored. Stay quiet, no matter what you hear." As the women descended, Tazai paused. From within her dress, she pulled a small, leather-bound book and handed it to Ethan. "Blackwood and Wainwright's accounting," she explained. "The numbers that do not match the supplies delivered. the proof we were willing to die for. Ethan took the book. "Get below," he said, "and pray your conscience is cleaner than mine." He replaced the trap door, slid the table back, and had just poured himself a whiskey when the first riders entered his yard. Through the window, he watched as Blackwood dismounted, 15 cavalry men at his back, all armed and looking for trouble. Ethan took a long swallow of whiskey, checked his Colt, and stepped onto his porch to face the reckoning. "Blackwood," he called out, deliberately leaving off the rank. "What brings the U.S. cavalry unannounced onto private property?" Blackwood's eyes narrowed as he took in Ethan's wooden leg, the gun on his hip, the hard set of his jaw. "Captain McCord," he replied, emphasizing the title Ethan no longer claimed. "We're tracking two fugitives, Apache women who murdered my son. My scouts tracked them to this area." He gestured to the barn. "I'll need to search your property." "Got a warrant?" "Don't need one. Military jurisdiction." "Not on private land owned by a U.S. citizen," Ethan countered. "My war record still affords me some courtesy, I'd expect." A muscle twitched in Blackwood's jaw. "Your war record won't mean much if you're harboring murderers, Ethan." The standoff stretched between them. 15 rifles against one old soldier with a wooden leg. Ethan was acutely aware of the two women hidden beneath his floorboards, of the evidence he now held, of the many ways this night could end in blood. "You could have been a colonel by now," Blackwood said, his voice low, "if not for that damn conscience of yours." "And you could have been a decent man," Ethan replied quietly, "if not for your lack of one." The tension was a living thing between them. Then a voice called from behind the house. "The tracks lead west, Captain." A lean Apache man in a cavalry scout's uniform emerged. He wore the blue uniform uneasily, like a second skin that didn't fit. "Maka," Blackwood acknowledged with visible distaste. "You're certain?" The scout nodded once. "Fresh tracks, not more than 2 hours old. 2 horses, moving fast." Ethan's mind raced. The women had arrived on foot. Who was this scout, and what game was he playing? Blackwood turned back to Ethan, studying him. "Seems your property is clear, McCord. For now." He mounted his horse. "But I'll be stationing men on the road, and I've sent a rider to Fort McDowell for official search orders. When they arrive tomorrow, I'll be back to search every inch of this place." He leaned forward in his saddle. "If I find you've been lying—" He let the threat hang unfinished. "We all lie about something, Silas," Ethan said quietly. "The trick is being able to live with those lies." Something flashed in Blackwood's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or recognition. He straightened, signaling his men to mount up. Ethan watched them ride out, the scout named Maka glancing back once with an unreadable expression. Only when they were gone did Ethan release the breath he'd been holding. The scout had deliberately misled Blackwood. But why? He returned inside and moved the table. As the trap door opened, Tazai and Kiana emerged, blinking in the lamplight. "Blackwood's gone," Ethan told them, "but he's coming back tomorrow with a warrant." "Did Maka find us?" Tazai asked urgently. "You know that scout?" "He is one of our people," Kiana explained. "He pretends to work for the army, but secretly helps us." "Well, he just sent Blackwood on a wild goose chase west. Claimed you two left on horseback." Relief washed over both women's faces. "He buys us time," Tazai said. "Time for what?" Ethan demanded. "By noon tomorrow, this place will be crawling with soldiers." "By then, we must be gone," Kiana said. "To Phoenix. A newspaper writer there has agreed to publish the evidence." Ethan pulled out the accounting book Tazai had given him. He opened it. Careful columns of numbers. Shipments recorded, supplies supposedly delivered, and alongside them the actual counts. Half the promised beef, rancid flour, medicine that never arrived. Thousands of dollars missing, with the initials SB and HW. Senator Harrison Wainwright, Tazai clarified. Blackwood's protector in Washington. Wainwright is pushing for all Apache to be relocated further south. "To land without water or game," Ethan finished, remembering the articles. Tazai nodded grimly. "Not relocation, extermination. While the land we leave behind is sold to railroad companies where Wainwright owns significant shares." Ethan closed the book. Politics, corruption. the same darkness he had tried to leave behind. He wanted no part of it, but looking at the proud, desperate faces before him, he knew it wasn't that simple. A choice between what's easy and what's right isn't a choice at all. Blackwood's men will be watching the roads, he said finally. But I know another way to Phoenix, an old Apache trail through Red Canyon. You would help us? Kiana asked, surprise in her voice. I fought a war to free men from bondage, Ethan replied quietly. Not to chain them to reservations, while thieves grow fat on their suffering. Hope flickered across Tazai's face. In that moment, something about her reminded him painfully of Eleanor, the same quiet strength. Thank you, she said simply. Get some rest, Ethan told them. We leave at first light. As they settled in the main room, Ethan stepped outside. The night sky was endless, stars scattered like spilled diamonds. He pulled the Medal of Honor from his pocket. The weight of duty he couldn't escape. Perhaps some debts could never be fully paid, but he could still choose what kind of man he wanted to be. He tucked the medal away and began to prepare for the journey. Dawn broke, painting the landscape in golden rose. Ethan was already saddling the horses when the women emerged. Food and water for 3 days, he said. Should be enough to reach Phoenix if we push hard. You're coming with us? Tazai asked, her dark eyes penetrating. Someone's got to make sure you reach that newspaper man, Ethan replied gruffly. Besides, you might need another gun before this is done. A flicker of respect crossed Kiana's scarred face. What of your home? Blackwood will destroy it. Ethan looked back at the small ranch house. Just wood and nails, he said finally. Can always build another. He didn't add what they all knew. If they failed, none of them would need a home ever again. As they prepared to leave, Tazai watched him with an unsettling intensity. You remind me of someone, she said, a soldier from many years ago, at Painted Rock. Ethan frowned. What happened at Painted Rock? A massacre, she said simply, and one man who chose differently. Before he could ask more, Kiana signaled from the edge of the property. Riders, coming from the east. Blackwood, Ethan muttered. Too early. He made a quick decision. Through the wash behind the barn. Stay low. They mounted and rode out, keeping to a shallow gully. As they reached the pine trees that marked higher ground, Ethan looked back. 6 riders, not cavalry, bounty hunters, drawn by the $1,000 reward. Blackwood's casting a wide net, he said grimly. Let's move. They rode in silence, the terrain growing more challenging. By mid-morning, the sun was relentless. Ethan called a halt in the shade of an overhanging cliff. As the women tended to the horses, Ethan climbed to a vantage point. No sign of pursuit. Yet. When he returned, Tazai was watching him again. How long have you lived alone, Ethan McCord? She asked. 5 years since my wife died. I'm trying to understand the man who risked his life for strangers, she said, especially Apache strangers. Ethan took a drink from his canteen. My wife, Eleanor, taught at a mission school, taught Apache children alongside white ones. She believed everyone deserved the same chance. He looked away. I wasn't always so enlightened. Your son, Kiana said, joining them. He was killed in an Apache raid. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's what they told me. 5 years ago. Found the bunkhouse burned. Samuel missing. I was in Tucson arranging Eleanor's funeral. Came back to more graves to dig. I am sorry for your loss, Tazai said quietly. Too many children have died in this long war. On all sides. Something in her tone made Ethan look at her. You lost someone too. My husband, my brother, my daughter. She spoke matter-of-factly, but the pain was a raw nerve. The cavalry came to our village while the men were hunting. They said we were harboring renegades. They burned everything. When? Ethan asked, a cold feeling growing in his stomach. 1874, she replied, at Painted Rock. The name struck Ethan like a physical blow. He'd heard of the Painted Rock incident, but he'd never connected it to his own tragedy. That was a month before my son disappeared, he said slowly. Tazai and Kiana exchanged a look. Before they could speak, the distant crack of a rifle echoed through the canyon. Trouble, Ethan said, grabbing his Springfield. Mount up, now. They rode hard, deeper into the rocky terrain. The shots grew closer. Bounty hunters, Kiana called from the rear. Maybe 6. Gaining. Ethan led them into a narrow ravine. As they neared the entrance to Red Canyon proper, more gunfire erupted. Not from behind them, from ahead. Ambush! Ethan swore, reining in his horse. Caught between two fires, they had only one option. He spotted a narrow trail leading up the canyon wall. Up, we climb! They dismounted, scrambling up the treacherous path. Ethan struggled with his wooden leg, each step in agony. Tazai moved with surprising agility, while Kiana covered their ascent. Halfway up, the distinct sound of cavalry bugles echoed through the canyon. Blackwood, Ethan grunted, pulling himself onto a ledge. He's found our friends below. The path led to a dark opening in the rock face, an ancient cave. Inside, the temperature dropped. Ethan struck a match, illuminating a large chamber adorned with faded pictographs. The ancestors' shelter, Tazai said with reverence. Gunfire continued outside, muffled by the stone. We're trapped, Kiana observed from the entrance. Maybe not, Ethan replied, examining a dark passage at the rear of the chamber. These caves often connect. As he checked the passage, Tazai approached. You're bleeding, she said, pointing to his leg. The climb had reopened old wounds where the wooden prosthetic met his flesh. It's nothing. Sit, she commanded with unexpected authority. Too exhausted to argue, Ethan complied. She knelt, rolling up his pant leg. From a pouch, she withdrew dried leaves and a salve, applying it with a gentle, confident touch. You mentioned you were a teacher, he said to distract from the sting. At the mission school, she nodded. For 10 years. The missionaries believed teaching us the white man's knowledge would make us forget our own. Instead, it gave us weapons they never anticipated. Like accounting books that can bring down senators. Precisely. She finished bandaging his leg. Knowledge is neither white nor red. It simply is. What matters is how we use it. The gunfire outside had stopped. They're making camp, Kiana reported from the entrance. Both groups, bounty hunters and cavalry. They've set guards on the trail. Then we take the passage, Ethan decided, rising stiffly. It's our only chance. They entered the dark tunnel, moving single file by the light of a makeshift torch. After what seemed like hours, the passage opened into another chamber. At the far wall, a faint glow indicated another opening. Hope surged as they crossed, only to find themselves on a ledge overlooking a 40-foot drop. Below, the main canyon floor was illuminated by moonlight and the distant campfires of their pursuers. Now what? Kiana asked. Ethan examined the cliff face. There's a path, he said, pointing to a narrow ledge, barely wide enough for one person. With your leg? Tazai asked skeptically. I'll manage. As they prepared for the descent, voices echoed from the passage behind them. Someone had found the tunnel. They were being followed. Go, Ethan urged the women. I'll hold them off. Buy you time. No, Tazai said firmly. We go together. Be sensible, Ethan argued. I'm slowing you down. The evidence is what matters. Get it to that newspaper. He's right, Kiana said quietly to Tazai. The book must reach Phoenix. Conflict played across Tazai's face. Finally, she nodded, taking the accounting book and securing it inside her clothing. 2 days to Phoenix on foot, Ethan instructed. Ask for Walter Hemsley at the Arizona Gazette. Don't trust anyone else. The voices grew louder. Go, Ethan urged, drawing his Colt. Kiana descended first, moving with practiced ease. Tazai hesitated, then placed her hand on Ethan's arm. Your heart is purer than you believe, Ethan McCord, she said softly. Then she was gone. Ethan took a position beside the tunnel entrance, pistol ready. The first soldier emerged cautiously. Ethan's shot caught him in the shoulder. More gunfire followed, bullets chipping the stone around him. McCord! Blackwood's voice boomed from the tunnel. There's nowhere to run. Surrender the women and I might let you live. Come and get them, Ethan called back. He held them off for 10 minutes, catching glimpses of Tazai and Kiana moving along the canyon floor below. Then a searing pain tore through his side. One of Blackwood's men had found an angle. You're hit, McCord, Blackwood called. It's over. Ethan checked his ammunition. 3 bullets left. Not enough. Rush him, Blackwood ordered. 3 soldiers burst from the tunnel. Ethan dropped one, but the others were on him. A rifle butt struck his temple. Through blurred vision, he saw Blackwood emerge, a triumphant smile on his face. "Ethan McCord," Blackwood said, looking down at him. "Hero of Little Round Top, and now a traitor." Ethan spat blood. "The only traitor here is you, Silas." Blackwood's boot connected with Ethan's wounded side. "Search the area," he ordered his men. "Find those women." One of the soldiers peered over the ledge. "Tracks leading south, along the canyon, Captain." Blackwood smiled coldly. "Seems your Apache friends abandoned you, McCord. Savages have no loyalty." Through pain-filled eyes, Ethan saw the path the women had taken. Blackwood's men would catch them within hours. A desperate plan formed in his mind. "They're headed for Mexico," Ethan gasped, "taking the evidence to plan an uprising." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Evidence? What evidence?" "Your ledger, records of every theft, your name, Wayright's name, everything." Uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's face. "You're lying." "Why do you think they killed your son?" He found the book. "He was going to expose you both." A muscle twitched in Blackwood's jaw. Ethan could see him calculating. The political fallout versus personal revenge. "Mexico," Blackwood repeated. "Underground railroad," Ethan improvised. "Apache have their own version. Safe houses. Been operating for years." It was a bluff, but Ethan was betting on Blackwood's paranoia. The captain's face darkened. "Phillips!" he barked to his sergeant. "Take 10 men. Ride for Tucker's Crossing. Cut them off before they reach the border." Ethan suppressed a smile despite the pain. Tucker's Crossing was 40 miles southwest, the opposite direction of Phoenix. As the soldiers divided, Blackwood knelt beside him, his voice a menacing whisper. "If you're lying to me, McCord, I'll personally see they peel the skin from your back one strip at a time." "Something to look forward to," Ethan replied through gritted teeth. They hauled him to his feet, his wooden leg cracking in the struggle. They bound him to his own horse and prepared to ride. "I've been wondering, McCord," Blackwood said casually, "why a man with your record would throw it all away for 2 Apache fugitives." Ethan raised his head with effort. "Maybe I've seen too many men like you, Silas. Men who wrap their greed in a flag and call it patriotism." "Poetic," Blackwood sneered. "We'll see how principled you are after a few days in Fort McDowell's interrogation cell." They rode out, leaving the blood-soaked canyon behind. Ethan fought to stay conscious, knowing that every mile they traveled north was another mile of safety for Tazai and Kiana. He had chosen a side at last. As darkness fell, his head drooped over his saddle. Ahead, Fort McDowell awaited, and whatever reckoning would come with the dawn. Fort McDowell squatted on the landscape like a predator. Ethan drifted in and out of consciousness, the ropes on the saddle the only thing keeping him from falling. "He won't last the night," one of the soldiers murmured. "He'll last long enough," Blackwood replied coldly. "I need what he knows." They dragged him from his saddle and threw him into a cell in the stockade. He lay on a thin pallet, the iron door clanging shut. He was cataloging his injuries: gunshot wound, broken ribs, shattered wooden leg, a raging fever, when a harsh laugh came from the adjacent cell. "You look like hell warmed over, white man." In the dim light, Ethan made out an elderly Apache man. "Blackwood's work?" "More or less." "He will let you die slowly," the old man grunted. "It is his way." The outer door opened. A thin man with spectacles entered, a Dr. Cooper. "Captain Blackwood instructed me to ensure you survive the night," the doctor said, kneeling beside Ethan, "though I suspect his concern is not humanitarian." He began cleaning the wound. "The bullet passed clean through. You're fortunate." He paused. "Though fortunate is a relative term in this place." As the doctor worked, Ethan studied him. He had the haunted eyes of a man who'd seen too much. "You don't approve of Blackwood," Ethan observed. "My approval is irrelevant," Cooper replied. He glanced at the old Apache. "Chief Natsila has refused my assistance. Prefers to die of pneumonia rather than accept white medicine." "Can you blame him?" the old chief rasped. "I can blame many things," Cooper replied wearily, "but not a man's pride." He finished bandaging Ethan's side. "I've left laudanum for the pain." "Save it," Ethan said. "Need a clear head." Cooper nodded. "Blackwood will question you tomorrow. He's riding out at dawn to pursue those women based on information I suspect was deliberately misleading. Ethan's eyes confirmed the doctor's suspicion. Thought so, Cooper murmured. He gathered his supplies. At the door, he paused. There's a telegraph operator here. Young fellow named Shaw. Sympathetic. If you had a message that needed sending. With that cryptic remark, he was gone. You know Tazai, Natsala said once they were alone. It wasn't a question. How? Blackwood speaks carelessly around those he believes do not matter. He hunts my daughter with uncommon hatred. Daughter? Ethan repeated, stunned. Tazai is my daughter, the chief said, pride and sorrow in his voice. She carries the blood of chiefs, and she carries evidence that could destroy Blackwood. She's headed for Phoenix, Ethan confirmed. A newspaper man named Hemsley. Good, Natsila said softly. Blackwood believes your lie about Mexico. It buys her time. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. I refuse to lead Blackwood to the last free bands in the mountains. So he brings me here to die, where my people can see what becomes of defiance. There may be another way, Ethan said slowly, thinking of Cooper's hint. If we could get word to Phoenix. The opportunity came near midnight. A young guard, barely 20, brought him water. As the boy leaned in, Ethan's hands shot out, grabbing his collar and yanking him against the bars. Make a sound and I'll snap your neck, Ethan whispered, a bluff his battered body could never back up. What's your name, son? Private Thomas Shaw, the soldier stammered. Well, Thomas, I need you to deliver a message to the telegraph operator. I can't. You can, Ethan interrupted, because what's happening here is wrong, and you know it. Blackwood is stealing from the Apache, letting children starve. Doubt flickered across the young man's face. There's proof on its way to Phoenix. I'm not asking you to free me. Just deliver a message. Shaw swallowed hard. What message? Telegraph Walter Hemsley at the Arizona Gazette. Tell him 2 Apache women are coming with evidence. Tell him to meet them at Red Canyon Ford. They'll need protection. That's treason, Shaw whispered. That's justice, Ethan countered. A long moment passed. Finally, the young soldier nodded once. I'll tell him. He hurried out, leaving Ethan with a fragile spark of hope. Perhaps there is hope yet, wooden leg warrior, Natsila said from the next cell. Perhaps. But dawn was still hours away, and with it, Blackwood's interrogation. Dawn arrived with the jangling of keys. Blackwood entered, flanked by 2 burly sergeants. Captain McCord, he said with mock formality, I trust you slept well. Like a baby. Blackwood's smile vanished. You're going to tell me everything. About the women, their evidence, their network. One of the sergeants displayed a set of brass knuckles stained with dried blood. Sergeant Donnelly here is a butcher by trade. He has a particular talent for persuasion. I've been interrogated at Libby Prison, Ethan said evenly. Your butcher doesn't frighten me. They dragged him to another room and chained his wrist to a ring in the ceiling, hoisting him until his foot barely touched the floor. The first blow caught him in the kidneys. Pain exploded through his body. Their destination in Mexico, Blackwood demanded. Another blow, then another. Ethan lost track, retreating into a mental fortress. Impressive, Blackwood admitted after what felt like hours. He wiped Ethan's spat blood from his uniform. Perhaps a different approach. Bring in the old Apache. They dragged Chief Natsala into the room. Perhaps you'll be more forthcoming, Blackwood suggested, when someone else suffers for your silence. Cold dread settled in Ethan's stomach. He knows nothing. Perhaps not, but he'll still scream when Donnelly starts breaking his fingers. Natsila met Ethan's eyes. Do not speak, wooden leg warrior, he said in Apache. My journey is nearly complete. Yours continues. Blackwood nodded to Donnelly. Begin. Wait, Ethan gasped. I'll talk. I'm listening. They're heading for Nogales, Ethan said, improvising desperately. A smuggler named Victoria's brother helps them cross. And the evidence? Letters between you and Wainwright. Kiana has them hidden in her dress. A flicker of genuine concern crossed Blackwood's face. He'd written such letters. The captain was now wondering if they'd been intercepted. Nogales is a 3-day ride, he said, pacing. We can intercept them. He turned to his sergeants. Prepare a detachment. 20 men. We leave within the hour. What about them? Donnelly asked. The old man returns to his cell. As for McCord, leave him here. No food, no water. We'll see if he's alive when we return. If not, we'll say he was killed trying to escape. They cut Ethan down, letting him collapse on the floor. As they dragged Natsila out, the old chief caught his eye one last time. Courage, he said in Apache. Then they were gone. Time lost all meaning. Ethan drifted in and out of a fevered delirium. The gunshot wound was infected. Shadows took form in the darkness. His dead wife. Confederate soldiers. Later, hours or days, the door scraped open. It wasn't Blackwood. It was Dr. Cooper. Christ almighty, the doctor muttered, seeing Ethan's condition. You look 3/4 dead. Feel 4/4, Ethan rasped. Cooper gave him water from a canteen. Blackwood's gone, he said, cleaning the infected wound. Rode out 2 hours ago, heading for Nogales with most of the garrison. He repacked the wound with bandages soaked in a burning antiseptic. Your message reached Phoenix. Shaw sent the telegraph and got a reply. Hemsley got the message. He's sending men to meet the women at Red Canyon Ford. Cooper's expression grew grim. But there's more. The women never arrived. They were intercepted 10 miles outside the city. Ethan's heart sank. Blackwood? No. Wayright's men. Private contractors. They've been searching every trail. They caught one of the women. The tall one. Tazai. And Kiana? The evidence? Unknown. The scarred woman wasn't with her. They're holding Tazai at Wayright's private ranch. The senator returns from Washington tomorrow. The implication was clear. Once Wayrite arrived, Tazai would be interrogated and disposed of. I need to get out of here, Ethan said, struggling to rise. In your condition, you wouldn't make it to the gates, Cooper said, pressing him back down. Then I'll die trying. The doctor studied him, then sighed. There might be a way. Chief Natsila died an hour ago. I'm supposed to supervise his burial outside the fort walls. And there's a sympathetic Sergeant Johnson who lost a brother to Blackwood's negligence. With his help, we might get you out in the burial detail. He looked uncertain. But after that, you're on your own. No horse, no weapons. 50 miles to Phoenix. I'll manage, Ethan insisted. Broken leg. Johnson might find you a crutch. The plan was desperate, nearly suicidal. But Tazai's life hung in the balance. When? He asked simply. Sunset, Cooper replied. They want the old man buried quickly. Natsila would appreciate the irony, Ethan said with grim humor. The doctor gave him a small dose of laudanum. I'll return with Johnson at sunset. At the door, he paused. 3 years of silence makes me complicit, McCord. This isn't redemption, just the bare minimum of human decency, delivered far too late. As the shadows lengthened, Ethan McCord prepared himself for one final campaign, one that would end in either justice or a lonely grave in the Arizona desert. Either way, he would not go quietly. Dying light painted Fort McDowell's walls blood red. 4 soldiers carried Chief Natsila's blanket-wrapped body through the western gate. Dr. Cooper followed, accompanied by a 5th soldier supporting a limping, hunched figure. It was Ethan, disguised in a filthy Apache blanket. Once out of sight of the fort, Sergeant Johnson, a stocky man with a perpetual scowl, helped Ethan stand straighter. We need to hurry. The night patrol starts in 20 minutes. They lowered Natsila's body into a shallow grave. Johnson produced a crude crutch fashioned from a cavalry lance. Best I could manage. He also passed Ethan a Remington .44 with a belt of cartridges. 6 shots. Make them count. Finally, he pressed a folded paper into Ethan's hand. A rough map to Wayright's ranch. The woman's being held there. Why are you helping me? Ethan asked. The sergeant's face hardened. My brother was stationed at San Carlos. Wrote me about the conditions. Then he suddenly died of fever, a week after sending me a letter saying he was gathering evidence of supply theft. We need to go, Cooper interrupted. One last thing, Johnson said, handing Ethan a pouch of hardtack and jerky. How will you explain my disappearance? You died during interrogation, Cooper replied. We buried your body with the chiefs. By the time Blackwood discovers otherwise, it'll be too late, if you succeed. And if I don't, Then we'll likely join you in unmarked graves, Johnson said bluntly. So do us a favor and stay alive, Captain. As the burial detail headed back, Ethan turned southeast. 50 miles of desert lay between him and Phoenix. The first step on the crutch sent agony through his side. The second was no better. He didn't look back. There was nothing behind him now but death. The only path left was forward. By dawn, Ethan had covered less than 5 miles. He found shelter under a rock overhang as the sun rose, promising another brutal day. 50 miles. At his current pace, it would take 10 days. Tazai didn't have 10 days. He needed to move faster. He needed a horse. Midday found him collapsed in the meager shade of a stunted mesquite. His wound had reopened. His water was nearly gone. He was drifting in and out of a fevered haze when he heard the pounding of hooves. Riders. 3 of them. He dragged himself behind the tree, drawing the Remington. Through the heat haze, he saw they were Mexican traders. Desperation overrode caution. He struggled to his feet, waving weakly. "Ayuda!" he called. "Help!" The traders reined in, hands near their weapons. The older man studied him with shrewd eyes. "American, what happened to you?" "Ambushed," Ethan improvised. "Apache took my horse." The Mexican exchanged a look with his companions. Strange. Apache do not usually leave enemies alive. "I played dead," Ethan said. "Please, I need water. A ride to Sycamore Station. I can pay." He produced one of Kiana's gold coins. The sight of gold changed everything. The older Mexican dismounted. "I am Diego Ramirez. We go to Fort McDowell." He offered a canteen. "Why do you not return there yourself?" "Bad blood with the commander." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "You are the one they searched for. The army man who helped the Apache women." Ethan's hand moved to his revolver. "Peace, senor," Ramirez said, raising his palms. "We have no love for Captain Blackwood. Riders from the fort stopped at Sycamore Station yesterday, asking questions. They offer $50 for information." He glanced at the gold coin. Perhaps not fine enough. Relief washed through Ethan. "Then you'll help me?" "Yes." Ramirez took the coin. With considerable pain, Ethan managed to climb onto one of their horses. "Sycamore Station is dangerous for you now," Ramirez said. "We will take the old miners' road. Bypass it." "I need to reach Phoenix," Ethan said urgently. "Wayright's ranch." Ramirez shook his head. "Impossible. Not in your condition. My sister lives in a small rancho 10 miles from here. She knows healing plants. 2 days there, you will be strong enough." "I don't have 2 days. A woman's life depends on me reaching Phoenix by tomorrow night." Interest sharpened in Ramirez's eyes. "The Apache woman. The tall one. Tazai." Ethan nodded cautiously. "She's been captured." The 3 Mexicans exchanged significant looks. "They carried evidence against Blackwood and the senator," the youngest Carlos ventured. "How do you know that?" Ethan demanded. Ramirez chuckled. "In this territory, secrets travel faster than stagecoaches. We hear things." "Then you know how important this is." "Men like them are not stopped so easily," Ramirez replied, his expression dark. But perhaps slowed, made to answer. He studied Ethan. "What is your plan? One injured man against Wayright's guards?" "I'm working on that part," Ethan admitted. Ramirez laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "An honest answer. Good. We will help you to Phoenix, senor. Not just to my sister's rancho, all the way." "Why risk it?" "Because Wayright's men burned my cousin's farm last year." Ramirez's voice hardened. "And because Blackwood hanged my nephew for stealing one blanket for his sick child." Words change nothing. Actions might. They rode through the afternoon. By sunset, they reached a small adobe rancho. A woman, Ramirez's sister Luisa, emerged, her face etched with concern when she saw Ethan. "Get him inside," she ordered. They laid him on a narrow bed. Luisa cut away the bandages, clicking her tongue at the angry, infected wound. "This man should be dead," she said in Spanish. "He is stubborn," Ramirez replied, "and his mission is important." She cleaned the wound, then applied a poultice of crushed herbs that burned like fire. "Rest now," she instructed. "The fever must break." "Tomorrow," Ethan insisted weakly. "I must leave tomorrow." Louisa shook her head but simply administered a bitter-tasting tea that sent Ethan spiraling into a deep, dreamless sleep. He awoke to darkness and whispered conversation. Several people were in the main room. Wayride arrives tomorrow, Ramirez was explaining. The security will be impossible to breach. Which is why we need more men, another voice replied. Ethan shifted, a gasp of pain escaping his lips. The conversation stopped. Ramirez appeared in the doorway. You are awake. Good. We have a visitor. He stepped aside, revealing a slender, well-dressed Mexican man. Captain McCord, this is Miguel Ortega, editor of La Voz Libre, Phoenix's Spanish-language newspaper. Ortega pulled a chair to the bed. Diego's message reached me. He said you had information about Senator Wayride that might interest my readers. More than information, Ethan replied. Evidence, hard proof. But it's with an Apache woman named Tazai, held at Wayride's ranch. Ortega leaned forward. I've been collecting stories about San Carlos for months. Witnesses disappear, evidence vanishes. I was told to contact Walter Hemsley at the Arizona Gazette, Ethan said. Walter was my friend, Ortega said quietly. He was found dead 3 days ago. A robbery, according to the sheriff, who happens to be Wayride's cousin. The news hit Ethan like a physical blow. His last official hope was gone. Then there's no one left to help. I didn't say that, Ortega corrected. Walter's death only confirms the importance of this evidence. I'm willing to publish it. But first we need to reach Tazai. Which is why we need more allies, Ramirez interjected. Miguel knows people in Phoenix who've suffered under Wayride's land grabs. Many have grievances, Ortega said, but fear has kept them silent. With proper evidence, that might change. I could gather perhaps 15, 20 men. Not fighters mostly, but determined. And I can add 5 more from Los Amigos, Ramirez added. Good men who know how to use rifles. For the first time, Ethan felt the outlines of a viable plan, not just a suicide mission. There's more, Ortega said, lowering his voice. The other woman, the scarred one, escaped. Rumors from the Apache settlements say a one-eyed warrior woman is moving among them, gathering support. Kiana, Ethan breathed. Hope surged. If Kiana was free, and if she still had the evidence, their odds improved considerably. We leave at dawn, Ethan decided. They left in a wagon, Ethan cushioned among sacks of grain, concealing rifles and ammunition. Luis's medicine had worked wonders. His fever had broken. Phoenix lay 30 miles ahead. 30 miles to Wayride's ranch, to Tazai's prison, and to the final confrontation that would determine all their fates. Twilight shrouded Phoenix as they halted at an abandoned stable a mile outside town. Carlos waited with 6 men from Los Amigos, hard-faced farmers and ranchers. Wayride arrived 2 hours ago, Ortega reported. Security is tight, at least 20 guards. He plans to interrogate Tazai personally tonight. He hesitated. Kiana has been organizing resistance. The Apache warriors have agreed to help. Apache and Mexicans working together. Historic enemies. Wayride must be even more hated than I realize, Ethan observed. The enemy of my enemy, Ramirez commented. They'll meet us at Red Canyon Ford at full dark. Inside the stable, Ortega spread a map. Wayride's ranch is in a small valley. The main road is well patrolled, but a dry creek bed runs behind the property. We'll need a diversion, Ethan said. My cousins can handle that, offered one of the ranchers, a man named Eduardo. A fire in the hay barn will draw plenty of attention. Good. While they respond, a small team enters the main house from the rear to get Tazai. As the meeting concluded, Ortega pulled Ethan aside. Wayride himself. The senator is legally untouchable. I'm not interested in legal remedies anymore, Ethan replied, his voice hard. They've operated beyond the law for years. Perhaps justice should meet them on the same ground. Red Canyon Ford was dark, the moon still below the horizon. They waited in tense silence. They won't come, Eduardo muttered. Why would they trust us? As if in answer, a figure materialized from the darkness. Tall, imposing, with a scarred face and a single piercing eye. Kiana, Ethan said, relief washing through him. You survived, McCord, she replied, her voice betraying surprise. Impressive, for a one-legged white man. Behind her, a dozen Apache warriors melted out of the night, faces painted for battle. Among them, Ethan recognized Maka, the scout, no longer in uniform. Blackwood? Ethan asked him. Still hunting ghosts near the Mexican border, Maka replied with grim satisfaction. Kiana stepped closer. Tazai is alive, but not for long. Wayrite brought a special interrogator from Washington. She patted a pouch at her waist. The evidence. We separated it before they caught us. Tazai carried blank papers as a decoy. Ethan felt a surge of admiration. So Wayrite doesn't know you have the real documents? He suspects. Kiana's single eye glittered with cold fury. Why else would he keep her alive? Then our priority is getting her out before that interrogation begins, Ethan said. He addressed the unlikely alliance. You all know the plan. Eduardo's group creates the diversion. Kiana's warriors will eliminate the perimeter guards. Ramirez, Ortega, and I will enter the main house. And Wayrite, Maka asked, his voice edged with vengeance. Justice is our goal, Ethan said steadily. But if he resists... As the group prepared to move out, Kiana handed Ethan a small leather pouch. Medicine, for strength. Chew the leaves when your body begins to fail. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. The land has not finished testing you, wooden leg warrior. Wayrite's ranch gleamed white in the moonlight, patrolled by at least 20 guards. From a ridge 500 yards away, Ethan watched through field glasses. More than we anticipated, Ortega whispered. Wayrite's nervous, Ethan replied. He knows the evidence is still out there. They waited. The moon rose higher. A carriage arrived. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. Senator Harrison Wayrite. The interrogation is about to begin, Ethan murmured. We're out of time. Just then, a flicker of orange light appeared at the northern edge of the property. Within seconds, the hay barn erupted in flames. Now, Ethan commanded. They moved swiftly down the slope, using the dry creek bed for cover. At the property's edge, rifle fire cracked from the east. Kiana's warriors were engaging the perimeter guards. They reached a servant's door at the rear of the main house. Ramirez splintered the frame with a pry bar. Inside, they froze. Voices came from a study down the hall, one cultured and demanding, the other defiant despite obvious pain. Tazai. The door was ajar. Tazai was tied to a chair, her face bruised but unbowed. Before her stood Senator Wayrite. A third man, bulky and professional, stood by a table of metal implements. Simply tell us where your companion took the documents, Wayrite was saying, and you'll be escorted safely to the reservation. There is no safety on the reservation, Tazai replied. Only slow death while men like you grow rich. Wayrite sighed. Mr. Pinkerton, perhaps another demonstration? No more demonstrations, Ethan announced, stepping into the doorway, his Remington leveled at Wayrite's chest. Ramirez and Ortega flanked him. Shock registered on the senator's face. Captain McCord, I presume. Blackwood apparently exaggerated your imminent demise. Sorry to disappoint, Ethan replied. Untie her, now. The Pinkerton agent made a subtle move. Ethan shifted his aim. Try it, and you'll be dead before your hand touches your gun. Wayrite held up a placating hand as the agent reluctantly released Tazai's bonds. Consider your position carefully, the senator said smoothly. You've assaulted a United States senator. That's a hanging offense. We have the evidence, Senator, Ethan said. Ledgers, correspondence between you and Blackwood. Your plan to steal Apache land for the railroad. Unsubstantiated accusations, Wayrite dismissed. The word of savages and malcontents against a decorated senator. Perhaps not in a Washington court, Ortega interjected, but 3 territorial newspapers are ready to publish the full story tomorrow morning. For the first time, genuine alarm showed in Wayrite's eyes. And wire services carry such stories nationwide, Ethan pressed. Even your friends in Washington might find you inconvenient. Wayrite's composure cracked. What do you want, Captain? Justice, your resignation from the Senate, and withdrawal of all land claims against Apache territory. Wayrite laughed. Preposterous. Is it? Ethan nodded toward the window, where the glow of the burning barn illuminated dozens of figures, Apache and Mexican, converging on the house. Your guards are occupied, your isolation is complete, and the evidence is on its way to every major newspaper in the country, unless we reach an agreement tonight. The senator's composure shattered. You understand nothing, he spat. Progress demands difficult choices. The Apache are a dying people. You found it necessary to accelerate that process for personal profit, Tazai said, her voice strong. Children died of hunger because of you. Collateral damage, Wainwright replied dismissively. History will vindicate. The window exploded inward as a rifle shot shattered the glass. The Pinkerton agent crumpled to the floor. Chaos erupted. Get her out! Ethan shouted, shoving Tazai toward Ramirez as more gunfire peppered the house from outside. Not from their allies, from another direction. Blackwood, Wainwright said, his face pale with genuine fear. He must have returned. The implication was terrifying. Blackwood would eliminate everyone, including Wainwright, to bury the evidence for good. Back door, Ethan ordered, covering their retreat. Wainwright, after a moment's hesitation, hurried after them. In the kitchen, they found Maka, rifle ready. Blackwood, he reported, 30 men attacking from the west. Our warriors are engaging, but we're outnumbered. They emerged into the chaos of the ranch yard. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. To the creek bed, Ethan directed. They made it 50 yards before a voice shouted, Hold it right there, McCord! It was Captain Blackwood, advancing with 6 soldiers. His face was a mask of rage. It's over, he said. Ethan pushed Tazai behind him. Let them go, Blackwood. Your quarrel is with me. My quarrel is with traitors and savages. His eyes found Wainwright. Senator, a surprise. Captain, thank God, Wainwright began, stepping forward. These men forced me. The crack of Blackwood's pistol cut him off. Wainwright staggered, looking down at the red stains spreading across his expensive suit, and collapsed into the dust. Loose ends, Blackwood explained coldly. The senator had become a liability. He gestured to his men. Kill them all. No survivors. As the soldiers raised their rifles, a war cry split the night. Kiana appeared from the darkness like an avenging spirit, leading a charge of Apache warriors. They fell upon Blackwood's men with devastating force. Ethan fired his Remington at Blackwood. The shot went wide as pain lanced through his side. Blackwood returned fire, the bullet grazing Ethan's arm. As the captain raised his pistol for another shot, Maka appeared behind him, war club raised. The club descended with terrible force, dropping Blackwood to his knees. Maka raised the club for the killing blow. Wait, Ethan called, limping forward. We need him alive to testify. The Apache warrior's face was contorted with rage, but after a long moment, he lowered the club. You are right, wooden leg warrior. Death is too quick for this one. They bound Blackwood securely. Around them, the battle was ending. Kiana embraced Tazai fiercely. The sisters reunited. Then she turned to Ethan. You kept your promise. We all did. He looked at their improbable coalition. Now comes the harder part, making justice stick. Tazai approached, her tall figure silhouetted against the burning barn. And what of our people? Will this change anything? It's a beginning, Ethan said. With the evidence published, Washington will have to respond. Something passed between them, understanding, respect. But before either could speak, a wounded soldier managed to reach his rifle. Look out! Kiana shouted. The man fired. The bullet slammed into Ethan's chest. He felt an explosion of pain as his world went dark. Through the dimming vision, he saw Maka rush to his side. He felt hands on his wound, heard urgent voices from far away. Tazai's face appeared above him. Do not die, Ethan McCord, she commanded. He thought he heard another voice. Young, male, somehow familiar. Father, it said. Father, hold on. Then darkness claimed him completely. He drifted in a void. Sometimes voices reached him. Tazai, Ramirez, and always that young male voice. Pain would pierce the darkness, anchoring him briefly to a world of candlelight and worried faces. Then came the dreams. Eleanor, Samuel, a village burning. Blackwood, younger, saying, We're brothers now, Ethan. Finally, he opened his eyes and the darkness didn't return. He lay in a small adobe room. Sunlight filtered through a single window. Tazai entered, carrying a bowl of water. You returned to us, she said, relief washing over her face. We feared you might choose to stay with the spirits. How long? He rasped. 12 days. The bullet passed through your lung. You are in the mountains north of Phoenix, my people's summer camp. You are safe here. The others? All safe. Ramirez is with his family. Kiana is here. She paused. There is someone else you should meet. She went to the door and called softly in Apache. A young man entered, tall, with features that showed both Apache and white heritage. But his eyes were unmistakable, the same clear blue as Eleanor's. Recognition hit Ethan like a physical blow. Samuel, he whispered. The young man stepped forward, uncertain. They call me Maka now, he said in perfect English. But yes, I was born Samuel McCord. Ethan stared. His son, alive. How? I was taken during the raid on our ranch, Maka began. Not by hostile Apache, by soldiers. Blackwood's men. They burned the bunkhouse to make it look like a raid. Why? Ethan demanded. Revenge, Tazai said simply. For Chattanooga. He told his men to kill the boy, but one soldier couldn't do it. He left Samuel in the desert to die. My people found him, Maka continued. Tazai recognized his description from stories your wife had told at the mission school. Ethan looked between them. You knew. All this time. Yes, Tazai admitted. But he was safer with us. Blackwood believed him dead. And you? Ethan turned to his son. Did you know? Maka nodded. Tazai told me the truth when I was 14. By then, I had become Apache in my heart. I wanted to find you, but it wasn't safe. Joy, anger, loss, gratitude, emotions crashed through Ethan. 5 years stolen. I searched for you, he said, his voice breaking. I know, Maka replied quietly. Tazai told me. She also told me why you stopped. The unspoken hung between them. Ethan's descent into bitterness, the death of his hope. I'm sorry, he said finally. There is no blame here, Tazai said gently. Only the cruelty of one man. Now there is a chance to begin again. Ethan reached out, his son alive. Maka took his hand, and something broke inside Ethan. He pulled his son into an embrace, heedless of the pain. For a long moment, they held each other, bridging a chasm of years and cultures. When they separated, Ethan saw tears on Maka's face and felt them on his own. Tell me, he said. Tell me everything. Maka spoke of his life, his training, his decision to infiltrate the army as a scout to gather intelligence on Blackwood. When I saw you at your ranch that day, he said, I almost revealed myself, but the mission was too important. And now? Ethan asked. Now we build something new. The world is changing, Father. The old ways are dying, but perhaps something better can grow. Kiana entered, a rare smile on her face. The wooden leg warrior returns. Good. There is much to do. Behind her, Tazai carried a bundle. Ortega published the evidence, Tazai said. The governor has ordered a full investigation. Blackwood is in prison, awaiting trial. She set the bundle on the bed. But not all the news is good. The railroad interests are powerful. They are pushing for a new relocation plan. So nothing changes, Ethan said bitterly. Some things change, Kiana corrected. A voice has been raised. It is a beginning. Tazai unwrapped the bundle. Inside was Ethan's Medal of Honor in a sheath of papers. The governor wishes to meet with representatives of our people to discuss a new agreement, a reservation of our choosing, land with water and game, schools. Her eyes met his. He asked for someone who understands both worlds to help negotiate, someone the Apache trust and the whites respect. Ethan looked from Tazai to his son. You want me? Who better? Maka asked. A decorated war hero with a son who is Apache. I'm not a diplomat. I'm just an old soldier. You are more than that, Tazai said firmly. You are a bridge between worlds. Ethan considered her words. Not redemption. Nothing could redeem all the blood that had been spilled, but perhaps a chance to build something worthy from the ashes. I'll need time to heal, he said finally. Take the time, Tazai replied. We have waited many years for justice. 5 weeks later, Ethan stood on a hilltop overlooking a broad valley. Beside him stood Tazai and Maka. The governor has agreed to the boundaries, Ethan said. Water rights protected. Schools operated by the tribe. Maka pointed to the valley floor. That's where the main settlement should be. It wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance. But for the first time in years, the future was not a void. It was a landscape of possibility. From his pocket, Ethan withdrew the Medal of Honor. "I want you to have this," he said, holding it out to Maka. "Not as a symbol of war, but as a reminder that courage comes in many forms. Sometimes in charging an enemy, sometimes in standing alone against injustice, and sometimes in building bridges others would burn." Maka accepted the medal. "I will honor it, and the man who earned it." "Honor the future you helped create," Ethan replied. "That's legacy enough." As the sun set, they made their way down the hillside toward the camp. Ethan walked between his son and Tazai, his new prosthetic legs steady, his steps purposeful. Ahead lay the hard work of building something lasting. The land remained harsh, but within its harshness, there was room for something that, if not quite redemption, at least resembled hope. For a man who had once believed in nothing but survival, it was enough. 3 years later, the headline in the Arizona Star read, "Blackwood begins prison term." He'd received 20 years in Yuma Territorial Prison. Ethan, now the official liaison for the New Canyon Creek Apache Territory, met with the governor. The school was finished. The irrigation system was working. The Territorial Assembly had approved funding for a new medical facility. Progress. Slow, hard-won, but real. Later, he met Tazai and Ortega for dinner. The story of Blackwood and Wainwright had become a national scandal, forcing reforms in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. After dinner, he and Tazai walked through the cooling evening streets. A comfortable silence had grown between them, a partnership built on shared purpose. "The autumn ceremony is next week," Tazai said. "The elders would be honored if you participated." "I would be honored," he replied. In his hotel room, he took out the daguerreotype of his wife. "You'd be proud of him, Ellie," he said softly to the image. "He's everything we hoped he'd be." Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more work. But for tonight, Ethan McCord, once broken by war and grief, allowed himself a moment of peace. The strange, winding path had led him not back to what he had lost, but forward to a future worth building. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of justice from the forgotten corners of history.